Howdy, soldiers. I know it's January, but it is a lovely springtime day outside. The sun is out, the birds are chirping. I have on a coral eye and these adorable strawberry earrings. Like I said in a couple videos ago, you know, it's the time when everyone is trying to optimize themselves and goals for the new year and what have you. But for whatever reason, I've been having some hardcore nostalgia these days, so I thought it would be fun to do another video in the series, unofficial series that I'm doing of 10 years ago I read for 2013. I've done two of these before for about 2011 and 2012, and I'll either link them in the cards or down below or somewhere, where we look up and go over some of the top YA classic hits of that year. So let's see, to set the scene for you all in 2013. I was 18. I had freshly graduated high school. I went to prom, which was exciting, in my little vintagey dress. Started my first year of online classes where I got textbooks mailed to my door, back in the days where online classes were an option and not what you had to do. Oh man, it's been a decade. And because I just graduated high school, I could put all my free time into modeling, so here's little baby Rachel at like some of her first runways. I'm like, oh my god, sweetheart, you're doing so good in those 6-inch heels. I know your feet hurt, but you're doing great. So just like in 2011 and 2012, 2013 was still in the middle of the dystopian craze. Also a year of a lot of sequels, third books of trilogies, second books in like 5-book series. We're getting a little bit more fantasy stuff, but it was mostly like paranormal, fallen angels, all these like murky, dark covers. The 2013 YA novel scene was just a free-for-all. Like, if you could grab a dystopian base and then like put some kind of paranormal twist on it and then call it a retelling, you slap a cover on that baby and it's getting published. And I have to disclose a quick disclaimer that there is gonna be a lot of shrieking in this video because I was getting hit left and right in the nostalgia, because what do you mean that book came out in 2013? It's been a decade? Are you kidding me? Once again, the internet is helping to remind me of my creeping and imminent mortality. If you're old enough to take a trip down memory lane, or you're young enough to want to know what the hell was going on 10 years ago, without further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and buckle in, and we're going to go over some of the top books that I read that came out in 2013. I realized that there are a handful of books that came out in 2013 that to this day are still some of my favorite reads, and I love discovering that, like, yes, they've held up against the test of time. And there are also some books that changed the trajectory of young 18-year-old Rachel's life, including Allegiant by Veronica Roth. You see this book, folks? This is the first time that freshly 18-year-old Rachel ever experienced literary betrayal. I was so mad at the ending because I don't know where Veronica Roth like tripped and fell. Like, I kind of get where she was going, but she missed an exit like 5 exits ago. We find out that like Chicago is an experiment, but even then I didn't realize that's what it was until like years later when some critic was talking about this book, and I'm like, oh, that's what happened? Okay. And then, spoiler alert, Tris dies? Why? What? Even back then, I did not like the serum aspect that this dystopian world had. The world was not built to the degree that it should have been. So not only did this just get me real good in the ribs with a good betrayal in there, the little extra twist of the knife is actually the fact that on Goodreads, apparently Allegiant is the winner of the Best Young Adult Fantasy and Sci-Fi Goodreads Choice Award of 2013, which really just goes to show that the Goodreads Choice Awards have been corrupt for a long time. Another book that gave me a visceral reaction, like when I saw this cover on the list. Do any of y'all remember The Program by Suzanne Young? I loved this book. Oh my god, I thought it was so cool and unique, and what an interesting take on mental illness and dystopian at the same time. This book was about teenage suicide and how the program was there for any teens experiencing mental trauma to enroll, and the main characters, Sloane and her boyfriend, both get put in the program because they're seen as high risk. Then it turns out that the program is actually like wiping people's memories, and that's why they don't have personalities anymore, because they can't remember what they're sad about. But it was supposed to be this big commentary on teen mental health and how talk therapy is important, and also how people deal with depression in different ways. I never read the rest of the series. I just looked, there's like 6 of them. How is my first question. Why is my second question. Funnily enough, all of the star reviews are really, really good for this book. I think it's at a 4.6 on Goodreads, but then all the long like blog reviews of this book are say it's really bad. So I don't know where the dissonance is coming from between the two audiences. Now this next book is one that I still have my physical copy of that I bought in 2013, and it was one of the first contemporaries that I ever fell in love with, and that was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. Yeah, Fangirl is in its double-digit birthdays now. You feeling old yet? This was after Eleanor and Park, and I know Eleanor and Park had a couple of controversies around it, but Fangirl was like the book that put her on a wide-scale map. This is about identical twins, Kath and Ren, who go off to college, so technically Fangirl is the first new adult novel I ever read. And Kath is a creative writing major and a fan fiction writer, so we get this wonderfully nerdy book about somebody who just wants to be left alone to write fan fiction. She's struggling with her self-identity and maybe falling in love with the first time, but she learns that there's more to love and to life. It's just this wonderful, heartwarming book all about writers and community. I'm assuming if you don't know about Fangirl, you know Rainbow Rowell from her Simon Snow series, but the fun fact about that is technically the Simon Snow books are the fanfiction that Kath is writing. Kath is writing fanfiction for a series that's a very thinly veiled Harry Potter knockoff, and so every couple of chapters there's like one page or like one scene. It's the fanfiction that she wrote, and then Rainbow Rowell actually turned that into a whole book series with Carry On. I read Carry On, it was okay, it wasn't really for me, but now it's a whole series. So apparently some of y'all liked it. You know what, anything's better than HP at this point, so like if you loved Carry On, go off. I just realized, does Baz have a tail? Because if no, Simon has a tail. Simon has a tail. So now there are 2 YA leads that have a tail, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Simon Snow did it before Carden even rolled on the scene. Speaking of Holly Black, oh, that was a good transition that I did not plan. Holly Black also released a book in 2013 that to me is one of like the coolest random outlier standalones that I have ever read, and that is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town. This is a dystopian, but it's a dystopian vampire novel. 2011, 2012, we were kind of coming off of the success of Twilight and all the vampire werewolf knockoff series, but this really demonstrates that no matter what genre you think is dead, you can always resurrect it into your own thing, pun intended. This is an alternate reality, slight future novel where vampirism has been exposed, and the governments have set up these giant places called cold towns that are basically maximum security city suburbs. So if you are a vampire or you got bitten by a vampire, you gotta go into a cold town, no exceptions. Our main character Tana wakes up after a house party to find that vampires have broken in and killed everybody at the house, and a vampire is still left behind. So she teams up with him because she thinks that she may have gotten bitten, and then her ex-boyfriend who also was bitten, and they're trying to get to a cold town. But it turns out that the vampire that was with them may not be who he says he is. And what I think is a good combination of like Anne Rice, old-timey, kind of aristocratic vampire, but then also looking at vampirism through a modern lens of like social media and reality TV and science. I really wish we had gotten more from this book. Like, I wanted it to be a series so badly. If they want to turn this into a movie or a TV series, I am on board. I will consult, I will act, I will write it. I will literally do anything if Netflix like wants to give me a call. Looking at this next book on Goodreads makes me angry because apparently it was also a nominee for Best Young Adult Fiction and Science Fiction in 2013, and Allegiant beat out this amazing alien race dystopian that was The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. You're telling me that this plot twist extravaganza of an alien invasion dystopian novel got beat out by Triss doing nothing for like 200 pages? Where is the justice in this world? This is not my villain origin story, but it certainly is a factor. A spaceship like parks itself outside of Earth, and we don't know what they want. They're not doing anything, and then suddenly within 5 days, each of the days, the aliens do something that devastates Earth, and at the end of the 5 days, they try to invade, but they're invading us like via our conscience and our mind, so it's a mind control invasion. This also has a place in my heart because it was one of the first books that myself and my younger cousin bonded over, and like seen in The Fifth Wave, nothing bonds a family closer than a little alien invasion. Oh my god, I just went online to like double check something about the book, and apparently, I don't know if this is just for the movie or if this is for the book too, but people freaking hate this. It's boring, it's cringy, it's bland. I'm like, did I have some like brain-eating alien come and tell me that this was a good book, or am I like just not remembering things correctly? These are savage. Oh my gosh, I love these. That's hilarious. Okay, so apparently what I thought was like a plot twisty cool book apparently was named by The Verge Horror Without Fear, Science Fiction Without Ideas. And that just goes to show, kids, that if you like a book and somebody else does it, it doesn't matter, because that doesn't take away from your reading experience. Since the two last books had probably the largest lasting effect on me, I do want to keep them separate, but I want to just very briefly give some honorable mentions and like speed through some sequels and some books that came out in 2013 just for funsies. So some sequels that came out in 2013 that I happen to still own are The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater, Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. We are getting the second season of Shadow and Bone coming out this year, and I'm so freaking excited because we get to see Stormhund, we get to see Nikolai, but we also get to see Wylan from Six of Crows, we get to see Talmar and Tamer. Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I do remember thinking this book was a little boring though, so hopefully they make the TV show better. And World After by Susan E., which once again, super cool science fiction take on dystopian about an angelic apocalypse, and I talked about Angel Fall in the 2011 video. The sequel came out 2 years later. I love this series so much. It's so underrated. Then let's just speed through some of the other ones. So we got Requiem, we got The Indigo Spell, we got The Elite, bleh. We got Scarlet, we got Crown of Midnight, and we also got Unravel Me by Tahira Mafi, which do I need to reread these? I remember being not super impressed with them, but then recently, freaking Book Talk has picked these up because they're a romantic young adult, and everyone's making all these like Warner edits and all quotes everywhere, and I'm like, am I missing out on something vital, you know? So maybe I'll reread these sometime, I don't know. And another sequel that I think is a good penultimate book for this video was actually the capping of a trilogy, and this was one of the first times in Rachel's fairly sheltered life that she ever experienced betrayal, loss, and heartbreak to the degree that she did, because I read Champion by Marie Lu. I know this was something in our reading journey that we all to this day still bring up to our therapists. Conclusion of the Legend trilogy with June and Day, who I would say were like one of the first absolutely dynamic duo power couples. You think you know the struggle of two soldiers on opposite sides of a civil war pining to be together? Marie Lu invented two soldiers on the other side of a civil war pining to be together. I do remember feeling a bit put out at this book because the first two books were fairly seamless. They were in the same society. But then for the third one, we expanded the world a little bit, but it was the world outside of this series was like way more interesting, and I was like, whoa, hold on. You mean there's a whole society in Antarctica, I think, that is like a video game system? Like, I'm sorry, we need to go back to that, excuse me? But instead we go back to Plague City, Civil War, and then everyone knows the end. The good old amnesia trope was heavily used, and I, like many other people who read this, cried. But I've never liked an amnesia trope, and I certainly didn't like it here, so maybe this is where my trauma stems from. And lastly, I'm so excited to talk about this book because to this day, it is still one of my top 10 favorite books of all time. The world, the love triangle, the magic, the family, the mutual respect. I am talking about the infamous conclusion to the Infernal Devices series, and that is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. The Infernal Devices is her steampunk gaslamp shadow hunter novel set in Victorian England, where we follow Tessa and Will and Jem as they are trying to solve a mystery, but also solve the mysteries of their hearts. The mental and emotional distress that this book has wrought on me will show up in my autopsy report. I've told this story before, but I bought this the day that it came out, and I started reading it after dinner at like 7 or 8 p.m. I was awake until 4 in the morning, and about like 2 a.m. onwards, I was just sobbing to the point that I was smacking pillows and like muffling myself with blankets because I didn't want to wake my parents up because I was crying that loud and that hard. Male friendship is really emphasized and done so well between Jem and Will, and Tessa being a bookworm and challenging both of them to look at the world differently and look at themselves differently, and like the way that they all interact. There's just so much like mutual respect and trust and love, and it hurts so bad. I've reread this, I want to say maybe like 10 times over the last decade, and I cried like a little bitch every single time. I love that I still get that amount of enjoyment out of it, if you count ugly sobbing and emotional trauma enjoyment. And because I'm a redhead and I love Cassandra Clare and I always joke about being Clary reborn, you know, a lot of people are like, okay, we get it, like, you like Shadowhunters, like, relax. And I'm like, I'm sorry, after a book like this, you expect me to not make this my entire personality? What do you take me for, neurotypical? Okay, and I think that is that on that. It's only like 3 p.m. and already it's getting dark outside, so my apartment is going to turn into the Bat Cave in like T-minus 10 to 15 minutes or so, so we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you all for joining me on this nostalgic journey. Very sorry to any headphone users if I got a little shrieky, but the more excited I get, the more I sound like a dolphin, and there was many instances of emotional distress while looking through this list of books. I would love to hear what you guys were reading in 2013, so please leave that in the comments below. Ooh, oh man. Okay, so you know how I said in like last week's video that I had gone to a sword fighting class and I was really sore? I went dancing with friends out at like a club, and I am more sore from doing that than I was for slinging around a long sword for an hour. So I don't know what that says about me and like my physical state. Like, yeah, it's hard to get the footing right for a 6-move triple combo with a staff, but if you think I'm gonna do a basic bitch white girl hip sway on the dance floor when a remix of Shania Twain's 1997 hit single, Man, I Feel Like a Woman, comes on in a lesbian bar, you don't know me at all. You know where to click like the video. You know where to click to subscribe. I hope you guys are all having a nice day wherever you are, and I will see you all next week. Bye!